To get the Big Buck Registry after show and other exclusive content right now, go to patreon.com/Big Buck Registry. Today on Deer Hunt.
And we're doing this and we're doing that. And I looked at that and I'm like, where's the law enforcement in that pie chart? Because you might as well throw that stupid pie chart out the window if there's no teeth in it. So help us provide the teeth, whether you support an International Wildlife Crime Stoppers, an Operation Game Thief or something. That's how those groups can help us.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 294. Wayne Saunders, Warden's Watch, Game Thieves, and North Woods Law, Part 2. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from -33 Merino Wool Layering System, keeping you warm on the coldest days while staying breathable and wicking away moisture on the wet ones. Rackology, everything you need in one bag. Now available at Rural King and Orslyn Farm and Home storefronts or online at www.rackology.org. Grizzly Ears, the most advanced engineered wireless earbuds for the outdoors. Covert scouting cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. Grizz Friction wood calls, custom-made calls that sound as good as they look. Mountain Deer Taxidermy. If you can dream it, we can make it. www.mountaindeertaxidermy.com. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. And show support for this podcast by visiting bigbuckmerch.com. That's bigbuckmerch.com.
Hey, this is Jeff Johnson with Trophy Scan, and you're about to hear on the Big Buck Registries podcast.
Hi, my name is Joe Donito. I'm one of the Adirondack trackers at adktrackers.com, and you're about to listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Waddell with the Bone Collector TV show, and you're getting ready to listen to another episode of the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to the show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, "Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry." It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we're out of harnesses. We need your help. Anybody that has spare harnesses, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. In a 23-year celebrated career filled with wild stories and tales of Game Warden lore, the beginning started with one of the biggest tragedies on New Hampshire soil. As a conservation officer, Wayne Saunders has caught many a poacher and became a regular on North Woods Law. Now Wayne reflects on his duties as lieutenant while interviewing conservation officers from around the country on his latest retirement project, a podcast called Warden's Watch. This is part 2 of Wayne's story. We'll get to our entire interview with Wayne in just one moment, but before we do, let's hear from our friends at -33 Merino Wool Products and Jim Keller with the Deer News. My experience started with a visit to the -33 headquarters in Ashland, New Hampshire, for a tour of the warehouse and factory, followed by an interview with John Glidden, the owner and CEO. John is a straight-shooting New Hampshire Yankee, if ever there was one, and that straight-shooting attitude reflects in his product. It's high-quality stuff that does exactly what the company says it will do. After a steady hike on a cold November day up the backside of a steep New Hampshire ridge, with the sun setting and the temps dropping, I wasn't soaked with sweat. Because of the -33 merino wool base layer, I was comfortably warm and dry and itch-free. Any perspiration was wicked away from my body, and my human scent was neutralized from the natural properties that the wool brings to the table. I was thankful that I was wearing that exact base layer when that dominant buck appeared. Rest assured, I'll be wearing my -33 merino wool base layer next year when the temperatures start to drop. I'd encourage you to check out -33 for yourself. Visit www.minus33.com, that's MINUS 33.com, and grab some base layers for the rest of this season or next. And please let them know you heard about them on the show by using the discount code BIGBUCK33 to get 10% off your next order.
Now here's Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Our first story, a California hunter fined $20,000 for baiting shooting trophy deer on his property after season. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Bree Stimson. A Northern California man was reportedly fined $20,000 this week for illegally baiting and killing a trophy deer on his property outside of the hunting season in 2018. William Valden, 70, pleaded no contest to misdemeanor charges Tuesday and will serve time through a work project or wear an ankle bracelet for violating the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's trophy animal rules, the Los Angeles Times reported. California Fish and Wildlife Game Warden Dave Moscat said he kept an eye on Valden's property after he noticed in 2017 what appeared to be a camouflage feeder that dispensed food to lure animals. In California, an animal must be hunted through a quote-unquote fair chase, not baited by grain. Valden had purchased the required deer tag permit and reported where and when he shot the deer, but he eventually admitted that he lied about shooting the deer before the season ended and forged the required signature of a department official who had previously signed off on his legal kills, the report said. Valden hasn't commented on the fine. Although there's no evidence Valden has done this before, Lieutenant Stacy LaFave told the Times, for a lot of those people that commit poaching crimes, it's kind of a way of life for them. Wildlife officials condemn Colorado resident who is filmed feeding deer in her home as selfish and unethical. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Michael Barterimo. Colorado Parks and Wildlife has filed charges against 2 residents for this selfish and unethical practice of feeding big game wildlife near their homes. Footage released by CPW also shows one of the offenders actually allowing multiple deer into her living room where she offers them a snack. It is selfish and unethical to feed big game, said Mark Lamb, an area wildlife manager with CPW. You are going to end up unintentionally killing those animals and also putting yourself in harm's way. If what you want is a pet or just to connect with an animal, choose a domestic breed that has evolved to live with people. CPW's stern words were issued following 2 egregious incidents of residents feeding big game animals in both the towns of Bailey and Evergreen. The former involved a homeowner feeding deer in his yard often enough that deer would come rushing to him when he stepped outside. The latter involved a woman who filmed herself allowing a large deer to enter her home from her yard. In footage of the Evergreen incident, the woman can be seen feeding a piece of bread to a deer that had entered across the threshold of her home through a screen door while multiple other deer stood waiting outside. In other clips, she lures a deer through the same door where she feeds them apples, carrots, and other snacks off the table. Officials with CPW confirmed that charges were filed against both offenders. They also warned that such acts are punishable with fines up to $100 per instance of feeding, along with associated costs. CPW said in a news release that all residents should refrain from feeding big game animals lest they disrupt natural migration patterns or even lure predators to the area. Officers also issued citations to 12 other residents for similar incidents in January, according to CPW. A deer bolts through a supermarket in Indiana. This story is from the CNN website and was reported by Amanda Jackson. As customers strolled the aisles of a Kroger supermarket in Indiana, they are joined by an unexpected visitor. Bridget Dan was shopping for some dinner items with her mother and 2 children on Saturday night. The family was waiting at the meat department in the Zionsville store when a large brown animal came barreling toward them. I saw a huge deer run frantically toward me. At first I thought it was a German Shepherd, so I pushed my kids out of the way but soon realized it was a deer, Dan told CNN in an online message. Dan captured video of the animal sliding along the floor as it turned down an aisle. At one point the deer even jumped over the meat counter. The store did have a surprise visitor last night. Entering through the front door, Eric Halverson, a Kroger spokesperson, told CNN, "As far as I know, this is a first for our division. I hope in her time near the meat case, the deer noticed our expanded selection of plant-based protein products." Dan said the store staff and police tried to catch the deer, but she eventually made it back outside. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Tim Donzie, Daniel Epalm, and John Geis for leads on stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is part 2 of our interview with Wayne Saunders.
Are you a skeptic by nature?
This job has made me a skeptic by nature.
Okay. Were you when you first got into it?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I even remember as a young park ranger law enforcement believing people. There was an accident with a bunch of illegal Mexicans, They rolled a van and they gave me this song and dance, and I hook, line, and sinker. I would never, ever, ever believe that story today.
Right.
So that somebody was driving the bus and they wrecked and they ran off in the woods, and it was a bunch of malarkey. But as that was my third assignment actually. But just dealing, I hadn't dealt with a whole lot of people. I was in New River Gorge as a park ranger, and then up on the lake in Lake Superior. So I dealt with a lot of people at Assateague Island National Seashore. My first accident, I believe. And I wasn't even thinking of crimes or anything. I was thinking of well-being, but, supposedly the van wasn't exactly attached to these people. And then some guy runs into the thing. Well, I took line and sinker. I put APBs out, everything.
Yeah.
Today, I wouldn't have bothered, because I know I'd be like, who was driving?
Right.
So it's...
I guess I don't trust people particularly. I don't know, just in general. And I can... In my other profession, I have to investigate the circumstance. I'm not, I work in the loan business. I got to tell if somebody's lying to me or not. I have to make sure
you
that
have to document that what they say is the truth.
It's a fraud investigation. That's basically what it is. Are you telling me the truth about your financials? Or are you not? Right? And when I dig in, a lot like what you have to do, you're trying to solve a crime. I'm trying to just figure out if they're put everything,
what the risk is to give them a loan.
Did they accurately describe themselves on this application? And sometimes I'm like, this is the biggest lie I've ever seen. But that's carried over into my personal life. I can go anywhere now, and somebody can tell me something. I'm like, that's a lie.
Yeah,
that's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. That person's honest and authentic.
And I can think of several cases in my career where they told me the truth and I gave them a break.
Right.
Because I never heard the truth, hardly ever.
Or here's another one. That person thinks they're telling me the truth, but it's actually not the truth. You ever get those where they
think it's the truth?
They believe it to be the truth, but in fact, the circumstances of what actually occurred didn't happen. They're making stuff up to fill in the blanks, but it's not. They don't know what the truth is, so they just make it up.
Right, and sometimes what you perceive isn't actually the truth too. Eyewitness evidence is the worst evidence you can have, generally speaking, because sometimes what people see isn't what was perceived isn't actually what happened.
Right.
So to have an eyewitness, and I'll do this in the Carrier case. It was a search we had, and I had a guy tell me that he saw him on the road walking this time there, and so that set my whole search and rescue mission in a whole different manner. But that guy, I believe. He believes that he saw Carrier walking on Route 16 that day.
Right.
I believe he believes that.
Right.
He believes the truth, but it's not the truth because we found Carrier on top of Mount Washington dead. Great
example. That person believed wholeheartedly that they saw that person.
Right.
But there's no way they saw that person.
Right. And me, skeptically, I don't, those eyewitness evidence, I don't like them. I didn't believe him that day, but he believed himself. So what do? Do I shift my search based on what he says, or do I base it on my gut feeling?
Right.
I have to go on what I can perceive as the evidence, because if I don't try to search that area, people are going to say, well, that guy told you he saw them over there and you didn't do anything about it.
Right.
Because I still believe he's on the mountain and that's where I need to put my efforts, but that's because of my experience and everything. But I have to actually shift based on what he believes.
Yep. And it's interesting because they say it with conviction and you want to believe them, but there's something off on the description, or it just doesn't add up as much as it should. And
they've heard enough of the story, so it's generally the same. And like you said, they really believe it.
Right.
And they want to help too.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes the people want to help see things that they, that was that guy there.
They're trying to be helpful.
And all of a sudden in their memory, he matches the description.
Right.
So
sometimes it's malicious. Sometimes they're trying to be helpful. But either way, it's a mistake.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Right. No, it's definitely a perception. But yeah, I would definitely, I'm a lot more skeptical of people than I used to be. And if I saw their financials, I'd probably be even more skeptical.
So you had, you've listened to some of our shows, and there was one in particular I definitely want to talk about this one because it was the Dave Mentalities show. And it was all about missing hunters.
Uh-huh.
And it's a viral situation. But
Yeah.
you being a search and rescue guy, like you're poking holes in all this stuff.
Oh, it was driving me nuts listening to
So
it.
I want to hear your perspective on this, because there's a whole group of people that think what is being said is accurate, but you're saying there's probably more to the story than what appears. So what about tell me about a search and rescue and why. Like I think there was somebody that was found recently that showed up in the same spot where he had disappeared just the other day. I forgot where it was. It was just some case somewhere.
And that could have been a mobile situation where the person is actually walking. You search an area, and they actually move back into that area after it's been searched.
Yeah.
A search mission is very methodical. First, you have a hasty search, which you have to do all the primary stuff. You have to go look where you think the person might be. And when they leave from a house, the most important thing to search is that house, especially when they're a kid or an elderly person. It doesn't matter which. I want that house searched, and I want it searched by my guys. Mm-hmm. I don't want the police officer can tell me there's nobody in the house. I appreciate that and everything, but it's just because I want my guys to look, because they're search and rescue trained. They understand under beds, everywhere you can hide. I want that place searched extremely well, because that's the first place we could probably find them before they go off into the woods. And then from there, it's those common places that maybe they walk down the road and they take a left down the brook and stuff like that. So you hit those common areas that they might like to go. That's a hasty search. You can do that fairly quickly. The things that bugs or kind of interrupts this is if you have dog assets coming in and stuff, because you don't want to scent up the whole area with human scents going through this. You'd like to use your dog assets too, initially as quick as possible. And then you go to a methodical line searching. And line searching is basically putting a whole bunch of people in a row that can see each other and walking through areas and not missing a thing. And hopefully we've trained a lot of them to be trained observers, to see things, to mark things, GPS. We usually put a GPS on either end. Sometimes now everybody carries a GPS, but we used to keep it on either end of the line so we knew what areas we covered. They come back to a command post, we download all this information. So we create a map on what's been covered, when it's been covered, and sometimes we'll go back to those high probability areas that we've determined and search them twice, because if the person is mobile, they can move out of a search area and into a search area and out of a search area. So if they're moving, they could possibly move back into an area we have searched.
Gotcha.
And that's why they have been found in areas that people searched, because at that time they were mobile and they probably moved back into that area.
There was a story just the other day, and I know I'd have to look it up, but there was somebody that went into an area. I think it was a hunter or a hiker. It was a hiker. And then somebody had said they'd seen him on a trail, and the person disappeared. Then they did a search, didn't find him. 7 days later, person shows back up in the same spot, approximately where they left. Mm-hmm. Why? I don't know. I know some of these theorists will say Bigfoot took him away for a few days and brought him back, which, of course, to each his own on that one. But it sounds like just wandering around outside of a search grid, and boom, comes back in.
And I'll never say never about most things, because I always get asked if cougars exist in New Hampshire.
Right.
Mountain lions, cougars. I'll never say never, because I'll say absolutely not, and tomorrow we'll have a roadkill.
Right.
But there are so many trail cameras out there, so many scouting cameras, so many cars on the road that we would catch them, a very good picture of them. We would have one hit on the road, like in Connecticut. There was a cougar with North Dakota DNA hit on the highway. Confirmed kill. North Dakota, wild cougar. Guess what? Did we have cougars in New Hampshire? Could that have come through New Hampshire? Absolutely. So all those reports, there's a cougar in New Hampshire. I'll never say never.
What's your theory on how it got there?
I probably could have jumped a truck. I've had some black rat snakes come up from the south on logging trucks, or equipment that's been hauled, that it was an old equipment or something like that. Just a tom being a tom.
Yeah.
So that's a boy being a boy.
Right.
Out looking, for that, that female, and gets kicked out of his area and starts moving and finds maybe doesn't find any females, but he finds a whole lot of deer in Connecticut and becomes a very fat, healthy cougar.
Right.
And starts looking for a female again, because that's, what drives them, whether it's, breeding and food. That's what animals are about.
So you can take DNA from a Colorado line and know that it's from that area.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife do that. There's a forensics lab in Oregon.
Okay.
And they take samples of DNA from across North America so they can have a general idea of where these animals are coming from. So if I get a deer, deer are probably, there's so many common things, but they probably have deer strands there. But bears, we were taking DNA for a while there, taking hair samples to set up a database basically so they could key that in. So if you shot a bear in Maine and you said you shot it in Oregon, if we had to do DNA on it, they could tell you you're full of, this DNA is clearly from Maine.
Yeah. You shoot one somewhere, bring it back. Oh, I shot it right here.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't shoot that here.
Right.
Most likely, although the one with a cougar showing up in Connecticut, chances of you shooting that animal in this state when it's supposed to be from out west is unlikely because their DNA says that it's
exactly
growing up. Yeah. And there are laws about game transportation.
Right, especially with CWD and the gameplay now. We don't want any of that bone or brain material coming across, so you got to debone everything.
Right.
So definitely, that's a big.
I forgot the act is from. It's an old act. It's an old law.
Oh, you're talking about the Lacey Act?
Lacey Act.
Yeah, that's when you commit a crime in one state and you bring it to another.
Right.
So you shoot a deer in Vermont and you bring it to New Hampshire and you register it and you shoot it illegally in Vermont. You've just created a federal offense by bringing it across the state line.
Right. And the DNA could now suggest that.
You could definitely use DNA.
So you could use DNA to prosecute the Lacey Act at this point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it brings up something else that I thought about, and you had said a few times that as a game warden, you become the prosecutor. Like, you don't necessarily have an attorney working on your behalf. Is that correct?
We don't in New Hampshire. I think we're one of the few states that we act as our prosecutor in lay cases, they call it. So misdemeanors and less, we are the prosecutors for those cases.
Okay.
So we go to prosecutor school at the police academy for 2 weeks, and we're supposed to learn how to prosecute, which is good and bad. Some of us are bad at it. Some of us are good at it. Again,
get up and say, Your Honor.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and it can be fun. I enjoyed a lot of the cases, but it is a lot of work when you start trading motions with an attorney. That's what he does for his bread and butter. And they know it too. They can weigh a warden down with motion after motion after motion, and you answer these motions, and it just gets out of control.
Right. Then it just becomes a time suck, and
and it takes away from what you're supposed to be doing. And then some of those things you still have to do. Yeah, you're not paying as much attention to, for sure.
So when does the crime go to the next level where you're
the felony?
The felony,
and that goes to your county attorney.
Okay.
And a lot of the OHRV accidents that we have with serious bodily injury, whether it's to themselves or others, goes to the county attorney.
Drinking or something like that.
Drinking, well, if it's a lesser crime, if it's a misdemeanor, if it's a DWI, if there's personal injury involved, yes, it can go to that felony level, and that's generally when we go to the felony level.
Okay.
We also, there's other cases that have gone to felony levels, deer cases and such like that, evidence cases. So you can start if you make up evidence and plan evidence and stuff. You've just created felony level status things. Right. So we've had that to go up to the county attorney before too.
Gotcha.
And they don't think about that in a game violation. They think you create a fake kill site. Well, you're falsifying evidence.
Right.
You're trying to make me believe that was the kill site.
Right.
So you just graduated to a felony. Whether we take that or not, it's a good big stick to be hanging over your head.
It's a great stick to hang, right? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead and lie.
Yeah.
And now we've got it's like fraud.
Absolutely.
It is fraud.
It is fraud.
It's fraudulent, which now carries a heftier penalty. And boy, you could have got off the hook at a misdemeanor, but boy, you screwed that up.
Right.
I mean, how dumb do you have to be? So you've talked about different poacher cases, and one of the things that I wanted to discuss, because I think our listeners would like to hear some of this perspective, and we have a really difficult time getting a game warden on the show, and you've had a hard time getting some game wardens. You're doing a much better job now, but when we first started, I've only had one other game warden on the show. He was out of Vermont, so you're not a game warden now, but you used to be.
Right.
And even that's difficult. So why is it so difficult to get game wardens to talk?
A lot of the guys don't want to flaunt, so to speak. They don't want to be the center of attention. I think that's a lot of it.
Okay.
But I think it's important to tell their stories.
Right.
I think it's important for people to know the type of work they do and what heroes every one of them are, whether it's search and rescue or protecting our natural resources. Being a game warden is a very special job.
Yep.
And we need to be better at communicating that to the general public. And Northwood's Law, Lone Star Law, those have definitely projected it to the status that we probably were in the 60s and 70s, because the game wardens back then were icons. The cases they made, the relationships they had in their community.
Yep.
I always talk about Arthur Muse, because Arthur Muse had a mountain named after him in New Hampshire while he was still alive.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's quite the feat.
Right.
So not that Arthur did that. The Fish and Game Club did that for Arthur.
But still, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
Usually you'll pass away, and then they start naming things for you.
Right. The Paul Doherty, the Town Forest, the Hastings Forest, those are all game wardens in northern Coast County.
No kidding.
That all these things have been named after because they were an influence in their communities, and they were something special.
Yeah.
So and it was recognized then. It's still recognized, but I think we're losing that because maybe people are changing their ways. We're not as connected to the outdoors. We're not as connected to hunting as we were back in the 60s. We're not as connected to those types of people. So I think programs like those that they see on TV are reconnecting people to the outdoors, not necessarily to hunting or fishing, but they're starting to understand why, how, and the role of a game warden that we've probably lost since the 60s in having that communication with people, because we've lost that communication because they're not coming to hunt like they did in the 60s, come to northern New Hampshire and spend the time in deer camp like everybody did then.
Right. Is there a shortage of game wardens?
Yes.
There is.
In New Hampshire, we have a shortage.
Okay.
We were 50 strong back in the 70s, and I think our last count was like 38-ish, 39-ish. So that's substantial.
Do you have a pulse on what the other states are like? Are they also running short?
Yes, other states are running short. Some states are doing well.
Okay.
There are others, and a lot depends on state budget.
That was my next point, is that a lot of this is budgetary.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But New Hampshire is recreationally based as far as a lot of the money that we get. The White Mountains, the search and rescue, that type of thing is certainly outdoor recreation. And we do the search and rescues. We're the police in the woods. And that isn't where we should be. We should be, trimming it. We should be gaining it because of all the work they do. And frankly, they're on the brink of something serious going on. I always thought I was on the brink of something going on because I had an ATV accident and 2 search and rescues going on at the same time. I had me and 1 officer on. So I sent Glenn Lucas to cover the OHRV accident. And I took the 2 search and rescues. One cleared up before I really got started on it, and the other one, when it cleared, I was directing volunteer search and rescue groups, and Glenn came up, and once he got done his ATV accident to do it, and we pulled off 2 search and rescue missions and an ATV accident with 2 people.
It seems like that could get out of control pretty quickly.
It can.
If they didn't go smoothly, if they escalated to 2 search and rescues for a long period of time, that gets ugly.
Right.
And it's because you're understaffed.
Yep, and there was an incident this summer. I think the colonel was quoted in the paper, we have nobody else. If we have another incident, we can't respond, because he had 4 or maybe 5 search and rescue missions going on at the same time statewide.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. And if there was another one, we wouldn't be able to send anybody.
Right, you're on your own.
Can't do it because we have everybody deployed. And think about those guys. They do a carryout. It's very physically demanding.
Exactly.
They go up and they get that individual, and then sometimes, if it's 5 miles in, you're talking 10 miles round trip.
Right.
And sometimes the steep terrain is challenging. It's just physically draining.
Right.
And then you're going to tell them to do that again. You did that Friday night. Now you're going to do a Saturday night, Sunday night. Oh, yeah, Monday, by the way, we got a search and rescue mission too.
I think about just dragging a deer out of the woods.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a 190-pound deer. I'm trying to drag him out of the woods uphill. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I've dragged a 100-pound doe by myself when I was in good shape. I'm not in good shape now, and that almost killed me. How so to see these guys physically carry a human body out? There's got to be running 100+ pounds every time. I would think.
100 pounds is really light.
It's really light.
That's one of the questions we always ask: how much does the individual weigh?
Right.
If I hear 300 pounds, I want to die.
That's the first thing you want to know. How much are we dealing with? How many people are we gonna need? So these days, I'll call not one buddy, two buddies with a jet sled, and we'll take turns.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the way they're going to get them out efficiently. Same thing with the body, whether alive or dead. You need a good staff,
right,
to be able to all in shape. You're not getting somebody that's out of shape on those.
No,
trails.
you don't want to have an extra rescue.
Need another rescue, right?
And some of these people are in good shape. They hike up there and they don't even carry because they're already tired. They're too spent, they don't jump in on the litter.
Right.
And we need everybody usually working hard.
Yep. I mean, that's just so physically demanding when you're talking about search and rescue. So, so in total, you're the game warden, which in the classic sense, you're monitoring the conservation side of fish and game. You're the teeth. You're the police. You're making sure that people are abiding by the laws of taking too many of any one species during the hunting seasons or the fishing seasons. And so that's one aspect. Then you've got the search and rescue dimension to the job, which seems extremely physically demanding. Is there another aspect to the job beyond those two relative to anything? The one thing that kind of came to mind was like environmental protection. Are there other parts of your job that are connected to that, or is that beyond your scope?
Nope. In New Hampshire, you would go to the Department of Environmental Services, or in other states like New York, they are responsible for that. So it depends the state you're in and what your responsibilities are. Okay. In New Hampshire, we're responsible for search and rescue. Vermont, they're not. The primary on search and rescue state police is. Okay. Maine, again, is primary on search and rescue. New Hampshire is primary. When you start to go to these other states, you're not primary anymore. The state police sometimes takes that role. Okay. But you're usually a secondary if they're being effective.
Gotcha.
Because if somebody's in the woods, you want your game wardens there to help.
Right. Gotcha. We talked a little bit about the poachers' weapons. You've got either two specific weapons that you don't like. One being the .22 Magnum, and the other one being the crossbow.
Yeah, and the Magnum, 22 generally, it's the Magnum makes too much of a noise. Poachers don't want to use that.
Okay, gotcha. I have heard you say Magnum before on the show, but I guess it could be a 22.
Yeah, maybe I did say Magnum,
seems
but
like a less effective, but it is quieter.
It is quieter.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what's your perspective on that? Because I think some people will be listening like, well, why is that a problem? Those are two of the things I use all the time, and I'm not a poacher.
Right, because it's one of those weapons that can be more silent. The 22 is more silent. The crossbow is silent. So it's taking that detection out of it. Okay. So and now it's becoming common. I have one of the poachers I caught. He went from using that firearm, the same search warrant. He went and got himself a crossbow. Probably just as effectively, except his neighbors aren't going to hear him shoot. Right.
And in some scenarios, as a hunter, I may not want people to hear me shoot because even if you're within the legal boundaries, not disrupting the peace around you is sometimes better because it's almost like you got that 80% of the population, or I guess so you got 20% of the population are hunters, 20% are anti, and then you got the 60% in the middle. And you got to win those guys over when it comes to voting and all that thing. So if you're out there shooting up the woods and when you're killing an animal, that might sway that a little bit. But if you could go in there quietly and just make them not even know you're there, that is good, I think, in the sense of public relations. But I can see your point where that's a poacher's dream.
Right.
So it can kind of go both ways.
Absolutely. Not every guy that has a crossbow, especially nowadays, is violating.
Right.
Early on, was that the poacher's choice? Absolutely. Right. It was quiet. It was effective.
Right.
So that's something that I looked for initially when crossbows weren't that popular and you had a crossbow. Right. Now, I wouldn't make that judgment at all because it seems like everybody's got a crossbow.
Everybody's got a crossbow.
And that's
not necessarily in New Hampshire because we don't really special circumstances use.
And we're going to get there. So everybody's going to have a crossbow.
Right. But in every other state, it seems crossbows are pretty common. If you go to Ohio, I see a lot of guys using crossbows. I go to Maryland. A couple of guys using traditional compound bows, which in their day that was the crossbow. That was the fancy, But these days, it's mostly crossbow stuff.
Right.
And these guys are all they're just hunting for the and a lot of them are using the crossbow because they don't trust themselves as much as they did with the compound, because they just don't feel like they have what they used to have. They're older guys.
Absolutely. I'm having issues with my other shoulder. I'm going to probably end up with a crossbow.
Right. And I think there are some definitely medical issues or just getting older. You don't feel like you're as accurate. Or maybe it's just the precision of it helps you as a hunter to make a cleaner, more ethical kill.
Nope, I can totally see all those aspects.
All those aspects.
And as technology turns and, everything becoming more common, it certainly changes my mind. Am I still suspect? Now I know those people that are probably more inclined to violate laws. Right. Now they have crossbows. Right. So now I pay a little more attention to where they're hunting and what they're doing.
Feel it out, right? I mean, you get into a case like, okay, what did he shoot it with?
Right. You could say the same thing with guns and for suppressors, too. That's another thing that is starting to become more and more available to hunters. Right. It was funny because I'm watching one of those shows that was filmed in Alaska, and the guy shoots a moose, and he's got a suppressor on. And I was like, what the heck is going on with that? And then I found out later it's so that the brown bears don't locate you. So because they come, when they hear the shot, it's like ringing a dinner bell for them.
Of course.
So that's why they use a suppressor, so they don't have that issue. And I was like, it makes sense, totally. Right. But I'm like, what? That's a can on that guy's rifle. What?
Initially, that'd be a red flag.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay. Now I get it.
Yeah, but now I get it. Now I understand that. Right. So what is probably something that I would look into a little more here is probably pretty common there.
Right. Gotcha. You're doing a lot of outside efforts for things like Operation Game Thief. And there's multiple versions of Operation Game Thief in other states.
Correct.
Can you go through all the different acronyms?
Oh, my goodness.
And I know you're not going to be able to cover all of them.
No.
But there's a bunch of different ones. But
they're
they're like anti-poaching services and devices to help cut down and help police conservation. Tell me about that, all your involvement in that, and what does it mean to you? Why do you stay involved?
Well, first of all, I'm going to pitch this because this is one of my missions, and it's because of branding. We all have different ones, but if I have my way, it's going to be Wildlife Crime Stoppers New Hampshire, Wildlife Crime Stoppers Maine, Wildlife Crime Stoppers, because what we're doing is branding something that we do. So New Hampshire right now is Operation Game Thief. Maine is, Texas is, and there's quite a few. That is probably the next most familiar thing is Operation Game Thief. Josh Hurst out of Arizona used to run Operation Game Thief in Arizona, and he worked with a lot of kids bringing the trail around, talking about anti-poaching and talking about poaching. And he kind of gave him a quiz. He's like, before he even started, he's like, what does Operation Game Thief mean to you? And these are kids and, numerous different grades, but all youngsters, and they were like, Operation Game Thief, that you want to steal my games, or you want to stop people from stealing my games, thinking video games.
Yeah, right.
So, and then he asked them, what does Wildlife Crime Stoppers mean to you? And they say, well, you want to stop wildlife crime. It's simple, it's to the point, and it's branding that we all need to do together. So no matter where you are in this country or internationally, Wildlife Crime Stoppers is what you reach out to. So that's a goal someday. It's going to be a very, very, very slow process. There's 2 wildlife crime stops. Maryland is a wildlife crime stopper.
Okay.
And Nebraska is a wildlife crime stopper. 2 in the nation, plus we have international wildlife crime stoppers, which was rebranded just before I took president of that association, which it used to be INRAC, or it was an acronym that had resources in it that, it was like, it's crazy. It was something that, it covered all the bases, but it didn't tell you as a sportsman what I was doing for you.
Right.
And that was our core. Even though we do other things, that's our core, is to stop wildlife crime. So that being said, New Hampshire Operation Game Thief, I ran that as a lieutenant, as a sergeant, and I grew it to where it is today. We have a nonprofit board, and the reason we have a nonprofit board, I looked at the successful Operation Game Thieves around the country, Texas and Maine being one. They both had nonprofit boards that actually got involved and helped out, and they were the most successful, and that's because they have sportsmen and women that wanted to help, that donate their time to help stop poaching. And you know why they do it? Because they love our environment, they love our wildlife, and they do it out of that love. A lot of them are hunters, a lot of them are fishermen, and they just love being outdoors, and the thought of somebody poaching those animals, taking them illegal to them, it makes them nauseous just as much as it makes a game warden nauseous.
Right.
So by bringing them into a nonprofit, it brings in that sportsman mentality. It brings in sportsmen to help sportsmen and to help wildlife. It's just not me, the game warden. And Operation Game Thieves are about adding more eyes and ears in the field, because as game wardens, we can't do it. We need help.
Sure.
We need help from the good guys,
right?
Which 90% of them are good guys.
You're understaffed. I mean, this is part of the solution.
And that's why it gets even more important, Jay, is because we're understaffed, is to get that important information that guy just shot that deer at night and here's the plate number. Or, what are all those turtles in that guy's suitcase? I saw him unzip it and he had a whole bunch of turtles in it. Or,
right.
Something like that, to drop a dime and get that information and get it to the appropriate authorities so we can take action.
Yep.
So, turn in a poacher.
The tip.
I kind of like that one.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. No, and I could that would be my second choice, I think,
right.
out of
right. That makes sense.
Yeah, turn in a poacher. I like that. It's good branding. Just consistency nationwide, I think, is what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
We did, Jen Wolf did a rap. What was that one in Michigan? Report all poaching. The rap.
The rap, right.
Yeah. Report all poaching.
Right. All kinds of.
I know.
I'm surprised.
Wildlife Alert. That's Florida. Wildlife Alert.
Okay. I'm kind of surprised that they're not all under one blanket. I mean, the theory's the same.
The theory's the same.
You think you'd unify it somehow.
I'd love to unify it.
Okay.
International Wildlife Crime Stoppers is kind of the unifier because most of the states are members of that association.
Right.
But that kind of helps out the states that need help, the kinds that don't have the budget, to whether they're putting trailers up or they're buying decoys, or they're trying to help those states and those associate members that need help is what their primary focus is.
Right.
But they're the umbrella over everybody, and it would be so nice to just follow suit. And I think that's starting. Maryland, that was a big step. They've brought up their Operation Game Thief program. I was a keynote speaker at a fundraiser down there for them in Annapolis.
Yep.
It was awesome to see where they've come in the last, 3, 4, 5 years when they came to the International Wildlife Crime Stopper Conference, and a lot of guys got fired up, and they promoted their program. They've started a nonprofit board that built this up, and they are rocking and rolling, and they're being an asset to Maryland game wardens.
Right. Right.
And it's so awesome to see, kind of like I did in New Hampshire. They're doing there. Pennsylvania is another one that's reunited, and they're Operation Game Thief, and they've got a trailer, and they got that program rocking and rolling.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we are refiring up the Operation Game Thieves, the Wildlife Crime Stoppers of the North America right now. It's been awesome to be part of it during this time. Hopefully some of it's, part of, I can take a little credit for it, but there's a whole lot of people. Lewis Rather is the executive director for the International Wildlife Crime Stopper. What a dynamic man that is. He just works and works and works and works. And he was a game warden in Texas, and he was the guy that ran the Operation Game Thief. And like me, when it came to retire, he couldn't.
Yeah.
He couldn't. He's like, I can't stop. I can't stop. So what's the next step? Well, International Wildlife Crime Stoppers, I'll be the executive director, and I'll bring this to the next level. and we'll continue on. We'll start partnering with the Rocky Mountain Elk Club a foundation, which we have. National Wild Turkey Federation, we're partnering with those guys.
Right.
Lewis is doing some outstanding stuff, because when I saw all these plans of these nonprofits that they forget the enforcement part. They remember the biologists, they remember the resources, they remember the land. And this is all the money they're raising. I saw a big pie chart, and I'm not going to say which one did it. Big pie chart of where all their money's going. We're buying land here, we're biologizing. I love that word. We're biologizing
that's a cool
here.
word, yeah.
And we're doing this and we're doing that. And I looked at that and I'm like, where's the law enforcement in that pie chart? Because you might as well throw that stupid pie chart out the window if there's no teeth in it.
Right.
So
that's the point of all of this. It's like
Yeah.
you can write all the laws you want.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't do any good. Where's the teeth? You
Where's
have
the
to be able
teeth?
to sink in, and
you'll say, oh, the state's supposed to provide the teeth. Well, guess what? The state's not providing a teeth in a lot of those areas.
Right.
We're not doing that anymore.
right.
So help us provide the teeth, whether you support an International Wildlife Crime Stoppers, an Operation Game Thief or something. That's how those groups can help us.
Yep. A law is nothing without teeth.
There's nothing without teeth. They can also help pressure legislators to put game wardens back to work. Instead of, when there's a budget default and there's 3 warden slots and they slay the 3 warden slots and then we balanced your budget. No, you got through the 3 game warden slots. We need those. That's why they were there.
Right.
But we balanced the budget. Well, that's just great. But we need those spots. Let's find some money somewhere to make those.
Right.
New Hampshire survives on outdoor recreation.
Yep.
That's why they come to the White Mountains, and they have to know that there's somebody out there that's going to go rescue them.
Right.
They come to hunt, they come to fish, they come to enjoy the lakes, and the people that are the police in the woods, and the police in the woods need the support. So let's not, legislator, when that happens, Pheasants Forever calls up and says, hey, we don't want that. Mm-hmm. The Rough Grouse Society says, hey, no, we can't have that. Those are the people that they can weigh in at those times and say, we need more game wardens, we need protection. So it's not only the money and support, it's also their support.
Right. Yeah. It can't just be a concept. It has to be an engagement.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to have some traction on the ground, being able to take action on your concepts. I mean, it's just simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's just simple. Everybody has a good idea. Not everybody can put one into action.
Right. And sometimes it takes a ton of effort to put it into action.
Right.
So that's why, Lewis Rather being charging with International Wildlife Crime Stoppers, me podcasting, because, it's part of me, Jay.
Right.
It's, I'm not in it for the money.
Right.
I want to promote, wildlife law enforcement. I want to promote these gals, these men that protect our wildlife, that protect our citizens. And they're the heroes. I want to tell their stories. I want to tell the sportsmen how they're protecting their wildlife. The hiker, how they're rescuing those people. When you're in the outdoors, how we're effectively managing the outdoors for you.
Yep.
So, and it's just a catalyst. They gave me the tools to do it.
Right.
I'm doing it. I'm trying to promote. I'm trying to fix those things that I see. And maybe it's because they're not aware. Of the Rough Grouse Society, maybe they're not aware that they can help.
Yep.
Those types, and I hate to pick them out. I like rough grouse. Yeah. That's probably because I'm from northern New Hampshire.
That's probably why. So you have you've had some interesting guests on your show. Maybe we can get in a couple of your favorites. I'm sure they're all somewhat.
They're all my favorites.
All your favorites. John Norris is one in particular.
Yes.
He's got some crazy drug stories.
Yes.
And you wouldn't necessarily connect the game warden with drug trafficking.
Not at all.
Have you been involved in any drug trafficking cases in New Hampshire? Or
support with locals, support with Border Patrol. Sometimes our search warrants, because we do search warrants for illegal game, generates drugs. So we usually always have the locals assist us and state police. Then we get drugs that's theirs. So that's always been not any.
Something that I think one of your guests said and that was a big case that had to be turned into a federal case because you had enough evidence that there was racketeering going on.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, killing deer and selling the meat over and over through a large process, right?
Yes.
And that had to be, and then that turned into a much larger federal case because of the game warden situation. But they said that drugs and poaching kind of go hand in hand.
They do.
They often
and we
do.
run into them commonly. That's Mark Rukowski.
Yes.
Who was doing a poaching investigation and ran into these drugs. As a matter of fact, they wanted to wait on their search warrant, and they were told, no, we got to go now with our search warrant. So that was going to ruin his, so he jumped in with them, and understandably, you got to go with sometimes the more important things.
Right.
And the drug thing certainly is probably more important than, poaching a bunch of deer as it affects our society. So you got to go with the bigger boys in that case.
Right.
They're not going to wait for you because you got a deer case going on.
That's crazy because they were going after the drugs.
But then, again, we're working hand in hand. And then when they're doing a search warrant on, for drugs and they find something exotic or something else, they call the warden.
Right.
Or you're there, too. Todd Shefchuk had a great story with a guy, felon in possession of firearms, and he runs out the back door tries to get rid of all his dope.
Right.
He was there for a felon in possession of on Todd's fish and game warrant, and he runs out the back with all this dope. These guys had no clue this guy was dealing drugs, and he's running out the back door with all the goods or trying to get rid of all the goods, and they get him for that. That just opened up a whole new can of worms.
I guess it goes back to that adage: a criminal is a criminal is a criminal.
Right.
In a sense, right? It doesn't matter what crime.
If you're going to violate this law, you're going to probably violate the IRS. You're going to do this. You're going to do that.
They got some of the biggest crime bosses in America went down for tax evasion, right?
Exactly.
Not for murder.
Right.
Right.
You got to work every angle.
Work every single angle.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked you to save another story for a little later. So later is now. Give me another great story of a case you were on.
Again, Chris Egan and Adam, we've got some good stories. I hope one of those come on my show so we can actually tell the stories. I'd like the two of them together because they worked very closely together. And I always had that sixth sense where I wanted to work and everything. So I'd go up to Pittsburgh and I'd grab Chris and I'd grab Adam. I'm like, hey, let's run a decoy. So I happened to park down near the river, and the river was kind of noisy. So they would call me and they would be like, hey, yeah, we just got one. And did you hear the shots? I'm like, nope, never heard the shots. So I'm like, if you need me to come up, because I'm sitting in a cruiser, you're going to have to let me know you need me. You're going to have to call me on the radio. So this was a really good day. I think we got 4 people shooting from the road at the decoy.
Wow.
Out the window or from the road. Well, they kept calling me and saying, hey, we got another one. And they're laughing about it because one thing wardens should do is share tickets. Because even though Wayne's a sergeant, he still has to produce. Mm-hmm. They like to see that he's producing and doing his job. And those guys are out there, they're writing tickets left or right for good violations of shooting around the road, shooting out the window. Mm-hmm. So they've got about 4 tickets. So, they're pretty happy and they're laughing about it. And they're like, and my plan was to transition over to a night hunting scenario right there. And they're like, oh, you can have the next one. Well, night hunting cases are pretty rare. And they both laugh about it because they know it's going to be night and the maybe we're not going to get a night hunter. The probability of getting a night hunter is so much lower than getting a road shooter. They're all laughing. Yeah, you can have the next one. So I readjust. I get a little closer because it's dark. You can hide in different spots. So I get a little closer and they transition to night. So, and all of a sudden it's not too far after. It's probably 30 minutes after legal. And kapow! I hear the shot go off, and once you get used to it, that's go time. You don't wait for the guy to call on the radio, say he needs you or whatever. Chris is really good. He's articulate. He actually called in. The guy was coming. He gives me blow by blow on the radio. He's backing up. He's pulling in. He sees the deer, and then I hear the shot, and I don't even worry about it anymore. So I get down there, and I'm not that far away, so I go screaming down there, and they're still trying to leave this area. I can see the pickup, and they got it in reverse, and they are throwing mud everywhere because they're trying to get out of there and not making much traction because it's pretty muddy, and just the fact that they stomped on it dug them a hole. Had they eased out of it, they wouldn't have had a problem, but they dug themselves a hole. Right. So I get behind them with blue lights, and we yard them all out, and getting all the paperwork, get all the guns secured. I get the guns in my cruiser. We get everything settled down. There happens to be open containers, which is another common thing. So we get the open containers out. We identify the people. We get their licenses. And I grab licenses. And there's two. When there's the passenger shot, so the driver, he gets aiding and assisting in taking of a deer during night. So, because he's inclusions. He's helped as much as the guy that pulled the trigger.
Yep.
So he is guilty of the same crime under inclusions. So we get the driver and the passenger who this shot, illegal night hunting. So I have one of the things in my hand because it's my turn. It's my turn. Chris asked the guy where his paperwork is, and he points at me. He's like, "The sergeant's got my paperwork." And Chris comes up to me. He's like, "Can I have his paperwork?" And I said, "The next one's mine." And Chris's face goes blank, and I didn't realize this is his first night hunting case.
Oh.
And he's like, "Sergeant Saunders, can I see you back here?" And I'm like, so we go behind my cruiser, and he's like, please, this is my first night hunting case. And I'm like, okay. And I gave him he got the paperwork on that one.
Yeah.
It was his first night hunting case. But it was my turn. And Adam, I wouldn't have been able, Adam had it half written out by the time I asked for this guy's paperwork because he would have never, ever given up anything because that was as far as his,
Right.
there was two and Chris was going to take it on the chin, not him.
Right,
You know?
right.
So that was a great case. That was just good. And those guys, they worked so well together. I miss when Adam transferred. He's now a lieutenant
Yep.
in District 5, does an outstanding job, and I can see why he moved
Yep.
on. But those two just worked together because they were the opposites. And I always say if you got to find somebody to work with you as a sergeant and a lieutenant, you want to try to find an opposite that you can work with. Mark Ober, that replaced me, he was very dot your I's, cross your T's. I think you know by now I'm not that kind of guy.
Right. Yep.
But it's awesome to have one
Right.
working with you. So when you
Right.
need your I's dotted and your T's crossed,
Yep.
Mark Ober, why don't you take that up for me?
Yeah.
And,
Everybody has their strengths and desires to do certain things.
Right.
Yeah. That's just so it's good to cover it all.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Okay.
so I was always a pleasure working with those guys, and it was fun. And that was one of those fun nights where they made a lot of good cases during the day with the decoy, and then we made a night hunting case. That's a phenomenal day, Jay. That doesn't happen a whole lot.
That's a good day.
That's
for
a
Game Warden.
very, very good day. Those guys will tell you that's one of the best days probably that they had, and it's certainly one of the best memories I have working with those guys and
Gotcha.
worked together a lot.
That's awesome. And it just going back to the deer decoys, you had mentioned on a show that it's not entrapment, it's opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's some, and you kind of think about this, and it's crossed my mind a couple times, over the years. Like, not that I'm going to shoot at a decoy off the road, but I want to know, like,
You'd probably be the first. Wouldn't be the first person that said that and did it.
absolutely, no doubt, right? But at the same time, you're like, it seems like it's entrapment because you're staging it. It's not a real deer.
Mm-hmm.
Is it illegal to shoot a fake deer?
But you perceive it's a real deer.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is a whole thing. How do you actually prosecute that? I guess that's not a felony, right? That's so you.
No, generally
you would be prosocuting this,
right?
So how do you convince a judge that this is, because they got to have some laws?
Because he knows what entrapment is and what entrapment
All
isn't.
right. Explain.
And it comes. A lot of our case law comes from drugs because, as police, we don't sell people drugs. We may sell what appears to be drugs, what that person believes to be drugs, especially when cocaine was around. The white powdery substance that, the undercover was selling wasn't cocaine.
Gotcha.
But the buyer perceived it to be cocaine. So he was purchasing something he believed it was. So, and that was giving opportunity to these people. And then you were prosecuting based on what their belief was, not what it actually was.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a lot of the case law came in from that. There are several deer case laws nationwide that tried the entrapment thing, and it's just providing the opportunity. Now, if there was a undercover game warden that in that truck with him, and he points that out to him and says, "Oh, there's a deer right there. Oh, you need to shoot that. Don't get out of your truck. Shoot it right from the truck." That's entrapment because now you're not only just providing an opportunity, you are placing him in there. You are encouraging him. Directing him. So that's a whole another gambit.
Gotcha.
And that's the way I try to explain being entrapped into something and not. If
Right.
you're doing it of your own volition,
Right.
then
And I guess also is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you have a deer decoy and it's off the side of the road and you pull up in your pickup truck and you shoot from your pickup truck and you have a road law, that's you illegally shot from a moving vehicle, you illegally shot from the road, you weren't 15 feet off the side.
correct.
Maybe if you
Might be on posted property. I always throw them on every now and then.
Yeah,
so,
posted property, that might be another one. But if you got out of your car and you walked into the woods and you got into 15 feet off the road.
And you had permission to be there.
Permission to be there. Then you shot the decoy.
You're good.
You're good.
Absolutely.
Now you just got a junk decoy.
Yeah.
Which sucks too, but nothing illegal. And hopefully,
Nothing illegal.
Hopefully you can get.
And we generally try to have
to
them
before. Stop, right.
before they put a hole in our decoy,
Right.
depending the decoy.
Right.
We have pieces of plywood that look really good that we make ourselves, and
Yep.
sometimes that we will let them shoot that because maybe they tagged out already. But again, hunting is pursuing.
Right.
So if that guy gets out of the vehicle, loads up his gun, gets off the road, and doesn't shoot, and we stop him, was he pursuing? If he's tagged out, I would take that case.
Right.
So the only reason he didn't fire, Your Honor, is because I stopped him, and he had already filled his deer tag.
He had
so
an intent to hunt, thinking it was a deer, and he was hunting, and he's tagged out.
Right, and hunting is the act of pursuing, not necessarily
Right.
killing,
Right.
but by making those overt acts.
Right.
He gets out of his vehicle, maybe sneaks up, gets up, takes the scope on, and you say, Game Warden,
Right.
Don't shoot.
Right.
Because now we know he's off. If it was posted property, I'd let him shoot.
Right.
So, and then we get there and it's not posted property, and we look, and he's already tagged the deer out, and he's the only one there.
Right.
Well, his intentions are very clear.
Right.
So, and those type of people that we catch red-handed usually don't argue a whole lot.
Right.
So they're more humbled than anything.
So and growing up where I grew up, there's always you always meet these guys, the guys that are just the classic bandits. And sometimes I hear these things like you got my son got a deer. Your son got a deer. He's 3 years old. Oh yeah, no, he can shoot. He can shoot my 243. He's a great shot. That might be a bit of an extreme, but not far off.
Not far off,
right? I mean. What goes through the guy's head? I mean, do you have to put yourself in their mentality, like try to process how am I going to
I don't think I could, Jay, put myself in their mentality.
But to understand how to prosecute, how to catch them, don't you have to kind of put yourself in their not in their mental state, but you have to understand that, okay, you wouldn't do it, but they would, so I got to understand how they would do it.
Right. And how they do it is they pretty much do everything for the kid, including probably put the scope on it and say, pull the trigger.
Right.
And that's how they do it.
Right. And that's not just that example, but catching anybody that's doing something illegally. If you're,
and that's tough for a warden is to actually do an investigation that involves a kid. It's tough. Right. And we don't like to do it because the parent or the guardian put that child in that position. And they're clearly, usually you can tell, I mean, like you said, when you shot your deer, you can say everything about it. When you interview a kid, guess what? My kid shot his first deer. He can tell you every little detail about that, and he's going to be excited to tell you.
Right.
So when I go over and say,
"Oh, Daddy shot it,"
yeah, kids are great.
Kids
they
are great.
Usually tell the
they
truth.
Tell the truth.
So, but even if they don't, if they tell them, don't tell the game warden I shot it, or they let the kid perceive that they shot it. So, but you can tell that kid that knows he didn't shoot that deer.
Right.
He's not excited. He's not, he's kind of got his eyes down and playing with the ground, and and then he can't give you any detail about it.
Way more expressive than an adult could. They can't hide their lies.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and shame on that parent or guardian that does that, because you've destroyed that kid's first experience of killing a deer and harvesting that animal properly.
Right. Teaching them the way not to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what I was meaning is that when you're trying to capture a criminal, you almost have to think like a criminal would in order to understand what's my next step here to prosecute. Or
they used to say some of the best game wardens were some of the biggest outlaws.
Really?
Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day.
That isn't the case now for sure.
Right.
I had relatives that were probably weren't the savoriest people. My dad has some good stories about my uncle,
Yep.
Illegally shooting deer and stuff. One where the game warden was sleeping in the field, and when he shot at the deer at night, the game warden pops off, and off through the swamp he went.
Wow.
To get rid of his shotgun, to spend the night in the swamp, to have the game warden arrive the next day looking for my Uncle Warren.
Wow.
But I will say my Uncle Warren was probably the proudest guy of me being a game warden.
Yeah.
And thought that was awesome. And Dave Hammond, who was the game warden sleeping in that field, my uncle had a great relationship
Right.
with him. And when he was retired, my uncle used to go see him. And it was kind of like the coyote, the coyote and the sheepdog, so to speak, situation with those guys.
Yeah. Right.
So, and my uncle had the most appreciation of me being a game warden.
Yeah.
So that was pretty awesome too.
Yeah, and I think you've mentioned a few cases too. Is like there is a statute of limitations on some of these things. So, and when there was somebody that did it, but you can't prove it,
Right.
that's where you go back off. But on the same case with the statute of limitations, you can probably go back years later. They might have a rapport with them. They might be more comfortable because they know they can't be prosecuted for that case.
I hope to do that in my future
Right,
podcasts.
right. Then that might shed some light on other people doing the same thing. Now you can kind of put the pieces together a little more easily,
Right.
Because you're studying the criminal. Lots of like, there's some FBI shows on now where they studied serial killers, and it helps them understand serial killers better and how to
Absolutely.
capture them faster.
Right.
Right. Same scenario, same concept.
No, absolutely. I as much as it's going to hurt me to go back, because some of these guys are very personal that I chased, and they know I chased them, and I got very close several times,
Yeah,
and
it's that close.
yeah, just couldn't pull it off.
Right.
And but some of them have been reformed. It's kind of a good success
Right,
story. One of
right.
the guys that I want to talk to, he had a boy and didn't want him to grow up hunting the way that he hunted or learned how to hunt. He wanted him to do it the right way.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
think he's a reformed poacher.
Right. That kind of brings me back to was your uncle.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably reformed. That's why he's so psyched that you became a game
I don't know if he
warden.
was reformed.
Maybe not.
He
But-
certainly had appreciation for
But
game
he probably
wardens.
felt some level of guilt knowing that my nephew is becoming exact opposite of what I was.
Right.
And then I don't have to worry about him.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Probably.
Probably,
Yes,
you know.
because he was very proud of the fact that I was a warden.
Right. It's a fascinating pathway, Well, cool. Let me hit you with 10 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Personality test, all right?
Yeah, I've seen you do this, and I should have been ready for it.
I'm glad you're not.
Yeah, my favorite color is green. Okay.
What do you see in this butterfly pattern?
Yeah.
Right. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Load your gun.
That's a good one.
I know, and I've not loaded my gun before and regret it to this day.
Yes.
That
happened to me last year, actually.
Yeah.
Not 1918.
This deer had webbed antlers, and he was 20 feet from me, rubbing him on a spruce tree. And I had to take the scope off of him and bring it back on. And if I clicked, and that deer blew. I've never seen. I don't know if you've ever seen a deer blow.
Yeah.
It shoots a cone-shaped snot out.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then, the world is so still, and I'm like, either that round didn't go off or I never put one in the chamber. And I grabbed a gun that I usually don't grab, and I got to work that action no matter what.
Right.
And I did. And
Yep.
yeah. So that was the end of that story.
Yeah.
But yeah, load your gun.
Same. I had one somewhere. I was walking down a trail. I figured I'll load my gun when I get further down. I wasn't even, 50 feet from my truck.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start to load, take 2 more steps. Deer standing right there.
Mm-hmm.
Sees me before I see it. Big blow.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. Nothing.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
The deer can be living very close to where
Very-
you park.
very close.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah. When you
So-
step out of your vehicle, load your gun.
That's pretty much that's
Yep.
exactly the right scenario. What's the we all go into the woods, and sometimes, being a game warden, you have all kinds of stuff in your truck. When you're a game warden, if you forgot one thing back at the station, or you dropped it somewhere and you didn't have it with you when you're out patrolling, what was that one thing that drove you nuts if you didn't have it with you?
My cell phone.
Cell phone.
Especially as a lieutenant, I used to say jokingly, I'd rather forget my gun at home than my cell phone.
Right.
So
Communication, right? Yep. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Oh,
I know
my wife should answer that.
Probably.
Yeah.
What would she say?
Not having ice in the ice maker.
That's a good one. Yeah. How old are you today?
I am 50 today.
You're 50.
Yeah.
Your birthday was
June the 12th.
June. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're 50, what would you tell a 25-year-old? Wayne Saunders. No,
Be a game warden.
Be a game warden. Redo it all over again.
Do it all over again.
Nice. I don't get that answer very often. That's good. I like that. You meet a stranger at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and they ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
Game warden.
Game warden?
Yeah.
Still this day?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll probably continue on that. I used to be a game warden. Now I'm a podcaster.
Right.
I talk about being a game warden, talk with game wardens, promote
Still doing
conservation
game
law
warden
and
stuff. Right.
conservation.
Because although you're not carrying your gun anymore, and you'll
always be a game warden.
You always be a game warden. You're
Everyone.
still doing your game warden job, just in a different fashion, even though you're not being paid to podcast by the state of New Hampshire.
Right.
You're still doing the same stuff. You're helping to promote conservation and conservation protection through police and
different avenue.
Just a different way
sure.
to do it. All right. What'd you have for breakfast this morning? I know what you had for lunch because I bought you lunch, but what did you have for breakfast?
You know what's funny? Because I just started drinking these stupid drinks because my New Year's resolution to myself is to get healthier. So I bought this, I don't even say the brand, this healthy drink, and it made me throw up the second day. So I'm drinking my wife's healthy drink. So you just make that sludge of whatever nutritional stuff, and I drank it. And this one doesn't make me throw up. So that's good, right?
Good.
Yeah. So it wasn't much for breakfast.
You get a billboard on the side of a highway. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything you want on it. What would it say?
Stop all poaching.
All right.
I stole that from Lewis Rather.
Very nice.
Yep.
I like it. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops in your head and why?
Well, I guess you got me. Donald Trump, and why is because he is just, I remember when Oprah asked him if he was going to be president. He's like, if it gets bad enough, I'll be president. And just the way he did it, and you asked me the first person, and that's the first person.
That popped into my head often, too.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe because he's in front and center all the time.
Yeah.
But
it's not necessarily because, that I thought he was the best candidate or anything. I'm not.
Yeah, I don't want to get political because I appreciate everybody's view. I still believe in a middle road.
Right. But, whether you like him or not, whatever, he still beat the odds, right? He set forth to do something, and he got there, and it was against a lot of odds.
And still beating the odds.
He's still beating the odds.
In benefit from what I see from the American people.
Tom Brady, same way.
Yeah.
He's still beating the odds.
Yep, I'll probably lose a lot of podcasts over this, but
well, we've had people come in and say, I don't want to listen to your show anymore because you said successful was Donald Trump. Well, like him or not, he still beat the odds.
Absolutely.
He set a goal to attain, and he got there. Whether you voted for him, didn't vote for him, doesn't matter. He still got there. That's successful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and we've had other Democratic presidents be successful in different ways. Right. Bill Clinton, I always appreciate this. He actually balanced the budget. Probably the last one that was ever balanced in our history.
Right.
Balanced a budget.
Right.
A United States federal budget balanced. Bill Clinton.
To me, if you got voted president, you're successful.
I would agree. I would agree.
Whether you agree with the politics or not, you're successful if you become the president of the United States.
And you did say the first thing that popped in my head. A lot of things have popped in my head since then.
Right.
But those successful people are driven people. They're people that don't sit around. They're people that can read, what's going on in life.
Yeah, right.
And, deer hunters are successful because they put their time. They I listened to you talk about how your hunt went, and you actually put a lot of time and effort.
Right.
Read the maps, found the pinch points, knew when the rut was. That takes a lot, and it's because you wanted to be successful that you did all of those parts. And I think any deer hunter can be successful if he did what you did.
I agree. I put the time in. I had a grand plan.
Yep.
And there are a lot of points to that plan that if they didn't get executed exactly as planned.
Yep. Or time frame, too.
That's part of the plan, right? The time frame, the location.
Yes.
The approach, the weather. All that matters. And if you don't follow it exactly, your odds go way down.
Yep. So, Jay, if it wasn't the first person, you would have been the second person that popped in my eye when I talked about successful.
I appreciate that, Wayne. What's a typical day in your life look like?
Now or then. There was no typical day as a game warden. If you plan something, plan that it's going to get destroyed.
Okay.
So even after hours. So plan to go a hockey game with your wife and kid, and guess what? I'm on a search and rescue overnight. Yep. True story.
Yep.
But today, it could be changing. It's my focus after retirement is on my son. He's 14. He'll be 14 in March, and it's to spend time with him, hang out with him.
Nice.
I get to be with him when he's got a dog. We show dogs now, German Wirehair Pointer. She's 4 years old. She flushed a bird this year, woodcock. He shot that bird. She found that bird. What a team effort. What a smile to see on the dog's face and my kid's face.
Nice.
So to be there, to experience it, to have him experience that, me being the catalyst to get there, is something awesome. So to go to these dog shows, 4-H dog shows with him and have him compete and be successful. We went to dock diving the other day, and the dog is good at dock diving. And Andrew loves it. So guess what we're going to be doing this summer? Dock diving.
There you go.
So, and I grew up with a German Shepherd, and I was a 4-H member, and I showed 4-H too. So I know that bond with an animal and how special it is.
Right.
And now having that to experience with Andrew and to go places and to do things with him and spend time with him, that's my focus for the next 4 years is that, and that's why I retired, and that's my commitment. And I just need to do things that I can fit him in or fit them in. That's why podcasting fits well for me right now.
Right.
Doing something I love, and I can be flexible.
Right. That makes sense. All right. And then finally, I know you deer hunt. What's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like?
Oh, man. I just got lucky, and I got the afternoon, and I'm running to some spot that I want to be in. This year, I ended up shooting a deer quickly in New Hampshire and ended up hunting Maine, which, man, you got a plan when you go to Maine. It's only an hour away from me, but it's still it's a day plan, and it's scouting new area and learning. So, it's funny, when I was a warden, I always liked to hunt the areas that we had an ongoing investigation in, because you learn those. And Eric Fluette and I did that, and I shot an 8-point buck that day. He found another illegal bait site, and it worked out good because we figured out the lay of the land. Yeah, the deer I shot was a long ways away from these, by the way. So.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. As stated by the former game warden.
Yes, but there's no short answers in this. But a typical day, it really isn't typical. Me and Mark Ober have always said we want to hunt Long Mountain, and we always make plans, and then something goes awry every year, it seems like. And this year I shot a deer first day. So he's like, so what about us hunting Long Mountain? And I'm like, dang it. I'm sorry, not this year.
Right,
so,
right.
If I had to do it again, I'd hold my tag in New Hampshire, because when you get a couple hours in the afternoon, I live in northern New Hampshire where I can jump in and go anywhere, and it's just it's a great experience to go in the mountains and mountain hunt and do some hiking, and you don't see a whole lot of deer.
Right.
That's for sure. But on occasion when you get one, it's a good deer.
Right. Yeah. That is all. I love mountain hunting.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite
big
activities.
Woods, and
big woods,
I'm not a big tracker because I don't want to get cut off, because I would have a problem with that. So, and a lot of trackers end up getting cut off, whether intentionally or unintentionally.
Okay.
If somebody finds that track ahead of you, then they're on the track, and you just tracked, for how long, and now there's somebody else in front of you, and.
True story. That's part of the problem with tracking.
Yeah.
Yep. It's public domain.
Absolutely.
Just pick it up somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's part of the problem for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a lot of time.
And then when you're the warden and somebody shot it, and you got to determine who actually, and it was always the fatal shot for me.
Yeah.
Because some guys get him leaking, and if you hit him in the leg and they're bleeding, that's not a fatal shot. And the guy that, this deer just came up on and he flattened it, that
the fatal is the one.
Fatal shot.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that could be a problem. Right?
It has been.
Yeah, people.
And I've had to be, and I don't know, rightly or wrongly, because it is really illegal. I guess who killed the deer has to tag it.
Right.
So I guess it is a legal question, but the guy that got it leaking calls me and complains that some guy shot at the deer.
My deer.
So yeah, and I'm like,
well.
Then looking into the investigation, was that the fatal shot? You tracked it for over a mile, and this guy flattened it. That's
a good point.
It's his deer. Was that going to die eventually? Probably on some of the shots, yes.
Right.
Would you have recovered it? Probably yes. But it wasn't somebody else. That was a fatal shot then.
Yep. That was the more recent fatal shot, so they win.
Yes.
They get to take it. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Wayne, I got to tell you, man, we've been doing this over 2 hours, and it's flown by. And
it has.
I feel like you have way more in the tank to go further.
23 years worth.
Which is why you created your own podcast, so that you can tell these stories and dig in and ask the questions of the people like I'm asking of you. And you have your own great story to tell, and that story is going to be coming out at some point in the future. I know it is, and you're going to do it right. And I think a lot of people listening to this show, especially in the beginning, will be wanting to check that out. So people can tune in. Where can we find your podcast? On social media, Instagram, all those places?
Yeah, all those places is right, because you put it out there for me, so that's good.
I want to hear from you. Do you know where it's from?
Yeah, certainly. Apple Podcasts is probably the number one download. Spotify, Radio Public, Facebook. Yep. Wardenswatch.com. You can actually go to wardenswatch.com and click on it and subscribe there as well. But as you know, subscribe helps me out, because when there's a new episode out, it drops and you get it. And you get to hear some of the other Game Warden stories, not just mine.
If we had to peek into 2020, I know it's early, but what are some of the shows that might be coming up?
Well, we're going to have a co-host, I believe. I'm going to bring in a guy from the West Coast.
Okay.
So it's going to be pretty awesome, I think.
All right,
and we're going to hear
for that. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, we're going to have some search and rescue stuff coming up.
Okay.
That's I think you're going to find very interesting, even if you're just a hunter and not a hiker, just the struggle with the elements of the outdoors. Put yourself in those places, because you could end up in the same type of thing while you're hunting and need a search and rescue mission, even if you're not a hiker or if you're not a mountain climber. But you can put yourself into those situations to being an outdoor enthusiast and glean a lot from that.
Right.
So, awesome. That's part of...
thank you for bringing me along for the journey, and thanks for coming on the show. It's been just a blast listening to you talk. And, every week I hear a new show, or every other week thereabouts, I hear a new show from you, and I get to edit it. So I get to hear it before anybody else, which is cool.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
And I appreciate everything you've done, Jay. Yeah. It's definitely been a great podcast. I always hear the quality of it's very good, and I relate that all to you, and you do an awesome job, and I'm glad we were able to make that connection and be a team.
Thanks to Wayne Saunders for coming on the show. These last couple episodes have been fun. We had a great time in the studio. Wayne spent an entire career with New Hampshire Fish and Game, 23 years, so we can't thank Wayne enough for his service to the state of New Hampshire to protect the wildlife here and enforce conservation efforts. It was a career that almost ended in tragedy, complete tragedy, and he turned it into a very vibrant and rewarding career. And now in retirement, he's carrying that on. He's going to the podcast Warden's Watch. He's interviewing game wardens from around the country. And I have to say, as his editor and producer, I am finding that the stories are quite riveting. It's a side of law enforcement that you don't get to see a lot because it's not highlighted. You see it a lot on like Northwoods Law and those types of shows. But these stories that Wayne is telling parallels those, but they're way deeper stories. You get way more information listening to the podcast. TV show, obviously, limited to a certain number of minutes, but in Wayne's show, you're going to get more details, more background stories than you ever will see on Northwoods Law. So we appreciate Wayne. We wish him the best of luck in his podcast adventures, and we'll give him all the support we can. So go check him out over at wardenswatch.com. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and interviewed re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice. Let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay. I'm Dusty Phillips.
And I'm J. Scott Ammann. We'll see you next time right here on the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunt Podcast.